Okay, we'll have a call to order. It is Thursday, October 6th, and you are at the Board of Directors meeting for North Bend School District. With that, we'll have the flag pledge over to my left. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, thank you. We'll have a roll call. Okay, I see Mary Schilling, Christina Simpson, Julie Thies, and your host this evening, Jim Jordan. We've got 4, and absent are Steve Ryan, who's sick, and Eric Gleason, who I think is also sick. So with that, next item, item 2, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda. I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, that's 4-0. Item 3, public participation. The board welcomes comments, questions from the public. If you wish to address the board, please fill out the public participation sheet available at the table and give it to the board secretary. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. If more than one person will be addressing the same topic, we ask that you appoint a spokesman to speak for the group. Speakers may offer objective criticism of school operations and programs, but the board will not hear comments regarding individual school personnel. And with that, we have Sammy Pearson.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank the high school staff and Mr. Johnson for a great open house last night and for changing the format. Big nod of approval on that. I'd also like to ask the board and administration to place a top priority on the communications position that's been vacant for the past few months. There are many incredible things happening in our district and no one knows about them. So if that could happen, that would be fantastic. And then I have a couple comments about the last meeting. There were 11 people who were willing to fill the vacancy on this board, and you chose to do nothing about it. This certainly sends an interesting message. At best, the district will now drift along. That's best case scenario. And that will be for the next 10 months until a person takes the spot. There's a lot of important decisions to be made between now and then. And this kicking the can down the road attitude is pretty much unacceptable, I think. Unfortunately, I think it's going to cost the district. I think that's pretty sad. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, item 4. Thank yous. 4A, Bill Caldwell, CEO of McKay's Market Food and Supplies for Meet the Bulldogs. Engels Furniture, donation of couch for Engels Furniture, best seat in the house. Joe Bolig 3 with Pacific Properties, donation of HUDL programs for volleyball, boys basketball, and football. Agenda item 5, communications. 5A, board reports and communication. Your silence is not okay. No report. 5B, student representatives to the board, high school representatives.
Usually me and Thomas Moffett, but unfortunately he's working tonight, so y'all will just have to endure with me tonight. It's been a busy couple weeks at the North Bend High School. Tonight, our boys and girls soccer teams are hosting Marist High School. Our volleyball team defeated Marist on Tuesday night and are hosting Junction City tonight in our pink out game for a fundraiser for breast cancer awareness. Our football team had a big win last week against Klamath Union High School, where we also crowned Bryn Hawthorne as our fire prevention court queen. We also had over 140 mini cheerleaders that performed at halftime, along with our band playing. It was a really busy halftime at the game last Friday. 2 weeks ago, we had a very special Friday. We started by hosting the Sanders family to a lunch in the Hall of Champions, where we dedicated and renamed the Hall of Champions to the Bob Sanders Hall of Champions. Later that night, we inducted 5 new members into our Hall of Fame and then honored them in the Sanders family at halftime. Our new Hall of Fame members are Eugene Holmes, class of 1919, who was our first ever state champion track and field athlete. Chris Richmond, legendary swim coach whose teams won 4 state championships. Kelly Homestead Armstrong, who won state championships in basketball and volleyball and then golfed in college. Rachel Heaney, an outstanding swimmer, winning 6 individual state championships and 3 relay championships and swam at Boise State. Cameron Lucero, first team All-State in football and basketball, and was the 4A basketball player of the year in 2015. It was our state championship 4x100 meter relay team. Today, our National Honor Society hosted a blood drive in the Bob Sanders Hall of Champions, which went good. Our homecoming dance will be on October 22nd. Tickets are available for purchase online. We expect this to be a huge success. Our drama department is hosting the first play of the year, The Curious Savage, starting on November 4th in the cafeteria at school. It will run for 2 weekends. That's the updates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
5C Association Reports, North Bend Education Association Report, Eva Varga.
Hello.
evening.
So I believe all 4 schools have had their open houses. And I just have to say, it is so nice to have families back in the building. And it really feels like a community once again. Not being able to do that for the past few years has kind of made us feel a little isolated. So really fun to have them in the building. At Hillcrest, we coordinated it with the book fair, and also Mr. Murphy came and his team made pizzas, and so it was kind of like a little party. It was really a lot of fun. On the other side of the fence, North Bay and Hillcrest are both kind of struggling with some shortage of staff in our life skills and check-in, check-out rooms, and so things are kind of hectic there. We've been playing musical chairs or musical classrooms rather at Hillcrest. And so I myself moved the ELD room out to a portable check-in, check-out, moved into my old ELD room, and then the life skills pushed into the check-in, check-out room all within the last few days. So it's been quite hectic, but it's exciting too, because we're, hoping that this new change and the larger space will make things better for our students. At the middle school, they shared that they're utilizing 3 distinct bell schedules again this year for the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So they have unique passing periods during the day and during lunch. And so it has some benefits, but there's also some struggles, particularly for the teachers who teach multiple grades. So they're still trying to work that out. The ELA team, English Language Arts team at the middle school is piloting some materials for adoption. And at the high school, our new vice principal, Chris Pendleton, has been sending out, I think daily, sometimes twice a day, pictures that he's captured throughout the day. And so that's been a lot of fun. So we get to see what students and teachers are doing throughout the building. So that's really a nice change, something that I haven't seen before. So, but also tonight I have Lisa Herndon, and she's going to have a report for you from our wellness committee.
Thank you, Eva.
Hi, I'm here to talk to you about a grant the North Bend School District Wellness Team is applying for from OEA Choice Trust. OEA Choice Trust is an organization dedicated to promoting the total well-being of Oregon public education employees serving in all roles within the district, classified, certified, confidential. They believe that all education employees, no matter their role, should have the support they need to be well, physically, emotionally, and socially. Healthy work sites reduce employees' stress, boost energy and morale, and promote better balance in life, a win for all staff and students. Last year, we applied for and received a $15,000 grant from OEA Choice Trust. We use this grant to purchase sink mount water filters, bottle refill stations, hold a 4-week employee hydration challenge with prizes, provide on-site 15-minute chair massages in each of the district buildings, have 3 all-staff gatherings, and provide gift bags to each of the district's employees at the welcome back breakfast. The larger grant we are applying for covers up to $100,000 over the course of 5 years. We are currently surveying the staff to write the grant to match wellness aspects staff are most interested in. One of the requirements of this grant is a 50% matching fund from North Bend School District. Most of this would come from in-kind donations, for instance, the use of building space, installing equipment purchased from the grant, and time within work hours an employee spends working on grant-related planning. Other portions of the in-kind funds will come from grants already secured by the district. For instance, the House Bill 4030 grant money is already tagged for staff social engagement and will tie in nicely with the goals of the wellness grant. We're hoping to gain the support of the school board in moving forward with this grant application. Once we have more details of the grant ironed out, I'll come back with a better presentation for the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 5D, Superintendent Report, Kevin Bogatin.
Thank you. I do want to start just tonight. We have had our open house. I came from the North Bay open house tonight. We had a huge crowd. Chef Murphy and his students were serving pizzas. And they're doing book fair. So it was really nice to see not all those happen across all of our buildings this year. Seeing parents, I think they were really well attended. Those events do take a lot of work, and so we appreciate that. And again, I think they all enjoy that. I do want to mention, I don't have this really prepared, but Eva mentioned a move around life skills and some of those things that are happening. You know, those are one that move wouldn't happen without those portables. So one of those, like, we're kind of doing a shuffle, and I know there's been some talk around, you know, how we're using those. And again, it does offering us some flexibility just even for this, as we are addressing sort of just changes in enrollment or needs that exist. So we wouldn't be able to do that without those portable classrooms. So it's one of those things that I'm glad that we're having some flexibility. I'm sure the schools appreciate that as well. And again, I know it's a lot of work, so I appreciate Eva and her team and a lot of other folks kind of doing the school shuffle in September and October. That's not how we typically want to do things, but we also didn't really see some of the needs that would exist in life skills. And so there's a few new kids that are just need a little bit, some places that are quieter, and this move helps kind of accommodate them. So appreciate that. I am excited to announce my appointment to the South Slough Reserve Management Commission by the governor. The Management Commission was established by ORS 273554 to provide for the administration and management of the South Slough National Estuarine, I don't even know if I have that word right, research estuarine.
Yeah.
Estuarine. I'm gonna probably have to learn to say that if I'm gonna be on this commission. So I apologize to our fellow South Slough people. The South Slough manages nearly 7,000 acres of natural areas along the Coos Estuary on the south coast. The reserve was designated in 1974 as the first unit of the National Estuarine Research Reserve System. Man. A network of estuary habitats protected and managed for the purpose of long-term research, education, and coastal stewardship. The reserve supports and coordinates research, education, and stewardship programs that serve to enhance the scientific and public understanding of estuaries and contribute to improved estuary management. Teachers, students, families throughout our region frequently attend field trips and educational learning opportunities, and I look forward to serving on this board. Parent voice is important to the success of our schools. The South Coast Educational Service District is inviting parents to join a regional parent advisory council to discuss topics impacting education and family health to inform district and regional decision-making. You can find out about local resources and connect and collaborate with other parents, not only from North Bend, but from across the South Coast region. For more information, you can contact Stacy Ivanek or Don Granger at the ESD. There's a number I have in my report that'll also go online, so you can find that, but we encourage people to be part of that. This year, we saw the return of the Bay Area Fun Festival on September 17th and 18th, also known as the greatest last part of summer. Our students, families from across the district enjoyed the weekend of festivities, including the Prefontaine Memorial Run, music at the Rockfest stage, and Boys and Girls Club Fun Zone. I want to give a special shout out to North Bay Vikings, who won 3rd place in the festival parade. But according to Principal Cahill, she's at her thing, but more importantly, we had 1st place fun. So this fall, we have officially begun our hybrid online learning program in cooperation with the South Coast ESD. Jake Smith, our teacher on special assignment at Bridges and former high school VP, is providing district-wide oversight and is the conduit between families, the ESD, and individual schools. At this time, we have 31 students enrolled in that program, 3 full-time elementary, 2 full-time middle school, and 26 high school students with a mixture of part-time and full-time. The majority of our elementary middle school students are choosing to not attend school and would like to attend elsewhere or be homeschooled without this option. A few high school students are full-time. The vast majority of our high school students are using this option for either Spanish or French for 1 period. This allows them to continue through Spanish and French 4, so our most advanced classes, despite our high school not having a teacher to instruct those classes. So the Spanish students will have the ability to take an AP exam at the completion of this course, which may award them college credit. It's still too early to determine really the success rates of students in the classes, but they are built on a semester schedule and are not expected to be completed until late January. So we're monitoring progress, and most of our students are maintaining adequate progress at this time. So we can come back with further reports on this as that program sort of evolves over the next course of this year. And my last thing today is October is Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, or ADHD Awareness Month. ADHD is a very common disorder which affects children and adults. It has for many years been recognized as a childhood issue that affects focus, self-control, and many other important skills. However, it has only recently been recognized as an adult problem also. The cause is an imbalance in the brain's anatomy and its wiring. A number of different resources are available, and the idea is to spread the word far and wide. If you want to help educate people, there are various resources available online, or it's at CHADD, so CHAD, which stands for Children and Adults with ADHD. So it's CHADD is their website, and you can find a lot more information on there. So yeah, October ADHD Awareness Month.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Item 6 on the agenda, action consent agenda items. We have board minutes, employment agreements, and amended OSEA Chapter 26 Agreement 2022 to 2024. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the action consent agenda items. Second.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the action consent agenda items. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's approved 4-0. Item 7, high school English language arts adoption. Tiffany.
And I just mentioned to Eva, as she sat down, as you guys have approved, middle school we adopted the curriculum over the summer, and it's been implemented. And in fact, tomorrow, our K-5 and our 6-8 teachers will be involved in continued professional development to dig deeper into the programs, get questions answered, kind of help solve some of the frustrations, and then obviously just dig deeper into that implementation and feel stronger and more successful with those new materials. So hopefully those will go very smoothly. But what I'm here for this evening is I'm bringing forward the high school teachers, the English department's recommendation for adoption. And they were not ready last spring. They were still trying to decide between 2 different programs. And the biggest struggle with that was the online components. They wanted to make sure they worked really well for the teachers and the students before they made the recommendation. And we made the decision to make sure we slowed down and got it right rather than pushing that. And so they started this fall with the old materials, but their hope was to have new materials by tomorrow for professional development. But I said, not until we have approval from the board, and then we would then proceed for the, we have a bid, but we'll proceed with an order, and that would take hopefully just a short time. So as a secondary director, I am here to recommend that the board approve Houghton Mifflin Hardcore into literature. It is published by Hope Mifflin, hardcore, I just mentioned that. Copyright 2022, it's for grades 9 through 12. It would be for our English classes in the high school and also access for our Bridges program. And it is for a duration of the 7-year cycle. And with the professional development, we have an estimated cost of $125,000. I think it's actually just a little bit under that, $124,000. And that does include the online resources, the hands-on resources for teachers and students, and also training and support for the teachers for at least the very first year, and then we can look at additional needs that they may have.
So was there a public comment period where they could review, and did many of the public take that opportunity to review?
There was a public comment review. I believe it was nearly 3 weeks. And we only had one person. And actually that was by a conversation, and I'm like, have you taken a look at this? Would you take a look at this? And they felt really good about the materials. They felt like it covered a variety of things. There is the online and materials, in-person materials, covers reading, writing, grammar, a variety of fiction and nonfiction. And yes, I actually was surprised we didn't get more feedback, and that was just verbal feedback that I received from one.
How was the information given out for parents to vet it?
It was emailed through, it was sent through the announcements at the high school. Shot K. Donnelly ran those announcements for us, and then also posted at our website with information and then links to actually be able to view some of the materials. The program can be down 6 through 12. So some of those things kind of overlapped and had some 6 through 8 materials there. And also an open invitation to contact me via email or phone, and I could schedule a time where they could actually see those in person if they would like.
Are those still available? The links?
Yes, they are. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any more questions for Tiffany?
There was a small error in the sample motion, just so note that it's for secondary curriculum, not elementary. So
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
just if you're going to read that, it's not elementary. So
I appreciate that.
yeah.
so we have
Sorry, I did miss that one.
Thank you.
So 9 through 12.
Correct.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'm going to make a motion. I move to adopt HMH into reading as the state approved English language arts secondary school curriculum for North Bend School District. Second that.
Okay, there is a motion to adopt HMH into reading as the state-approved English language arts secondary school curriculum for North Bend School District. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pass 4-0.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Thank
Tiffany.
you.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item 8, Division 22 assurances.
Well,
Tiffany and Bruce are staying for that one. So
yes, we are. So we are here this evening to share a little bit about the yearly process, the annual process of Division 22, which is a process that per law, the Oregon Department of Education asks each superintendent each year in the fall to bring back information and a report back to the school board and to the community. And so within this piece, there are multiple laws that we need to make sure and validate that these things are occurring. And so it can be around instruction and assessment, curriculum, safety, wellness, a variety of areas that we are asked to clarify whether we are in compliance or not. And if we aren't, then how do we build a plan to become compliant with those pieces? And so part of our evaluation is, as an administrative team, we take a look at the different areas. In some years, the state will actually select particular ones to look at, not necessarily all of them. It's quite a lengthy list of things we're required to do by law. And so we take a look at what those areas are, and then we try to connect with those particular people. So for example, if it's looking at talented and gifted services and identification, that would be an area that I oversee. So I make sure and take a look at that law and make sure we're in compliance with that. Often with like special education, Corrine and her department will take a look at those pieces. We'll ask principals to take a look at components and verify. And then also often Mike Forrester with some of the pieces around athletics and safety. He'll take a look at those as well. And then obviously Mr. Martin and I both were involved in the process as well. So would you like to share? We did look at all of those and there were two particular areas we were not in compliance as of last year. And this is a review for 21-22 to clarify.
Well, there are two areas that we weren't in compliance with physical education minutes at the elementary level. And that's been a tough one. It's been a phased-in approach and COVID impacted us about the time they were becoming the mandate, the 150 minutes. We offer 2 30-minute classes weekly for each grade level by a physical education teacher. Teachers provide some physical education beyond that, but we don't get to the 150 minutes. We haven't had a schedule to do that. Most recently, I think it's been impacted the most by COVID and some of the cohorting that we had to do last year. It made it difficult to come up with a plan on that. And our length of our day and some of the unfinished learning that we're trying to recoup in there makes it difficult as well because something has to go to get to that point. I think we struggle just facilities wise to have a spot that's dry and warm for kids to provide that physical education in the winter months for part of the time as well. So there's some issues and we're looking at some opportunities and some ways that we can cover that as we go forward. The other area that we had was in the area of essential skills work samples that we had at the elementary, across, I think it was 3 to 8 that we mainly struggled with that. Again, unfinished learning that we had coming back from COVID impacted that. And I think each child in grades 3 through 8 is required to do a work sample in the area of writing, mathematics, speaking, and science as they do that. One of the things that we found was it's a huge process to build that skill to get to that point. And because of COVID, they'd been suspended for 2 years in there. And so as we started back into them, it took a long time to get kids up to speed and trained in that whole process. And it's not a one-day simple process to do that. So we put a focus on writing and math last year in the elementary grades, and we put science and speaking on hold for a year so that we could concentrate on those core 2 areas. Our plan is that this year we'll be back up to speed with all areas being accounted for in work samples in grades 3 through 8 and once at the high school level as well, which is a requirement in there as we go forward. And there was a couple areas I think that were suspended as well. The kindergarten assessment was an area that was suspended. They're doing some reworking of the kindergarten assessment, and I understand that they anticipate having a new one coming back online next year, as well as some of those essential skill requirements at the high school level. Are there other questions that the board may have around the Division 22 standards? Tiffany can answer all those.
Are you on track to get that in line this year?
Which one, Julie?
Any of them?
PE is going to be the harder one, I think, as we go forward. I think we need to look at that, and I think next year we'll try to have a plan that will address that.
Okay.
As we do. I think work samples, no problem as we go forward. The other 2 have been suspended until the state gives us guidance to come back.
Okay. Thank you.
So I notice on the motion, it discusses 30 hours of professional development, up to 30 hours parent-teacher conferences, and 60 hours of recess for students and grades. So I have a story I'd like to share from my youth. I was in 2nd grade. Miss Bender was my teacher. And when I was in 2nd grade, I was a very funny person. And I like to share my humor with my classmates. And Miss Bender did not always share the humor that I had within me that I wanted to share with the class. So it's like October, my mom, and back in the day, you didn't go with your parents that one of your parent or both of your parents went. So my mom went, and she was expecting to hear that your son's an angel. He's a blessing to have in the class. We just love him. That was not the message my mom heard. She heard that I was very disruptive. I was a problem. And I was probably close to being put in another class. So Miss Bender provided my mother some very direct feedback that was very pointed. So she came home that night and, my dad and I are there. I don't think my older brother was there, but she says, I can't believe what she told me. She said, you're a problem, you're a class clown, you're disruptive. And my mom didn't really believe it. And I'm thinking, how could Miss Bender have gotten it so wrong? But in second grade, I did not get a beating that night. I was thankful for that retrospectively, but I had enough self-awareness to know my mother lost face hugely in this encounter with Miss Bender. And I kind of self-regulated a little bit. So the point of my story is I would like the administrators to encourage their teachers to give direct impact or direct feedback that's pointed and meaningful, because that sorted me out in second grade for the better. So anyway, I'll let you guys keep going.
Fantastic advice. The 30 hours in there gives us some flexibility. We meet the instructional hours requirement almost across the board. I think it's across the board, even with the new 2-hour early release in there. The 30 hours additional, by approving that, gives us the flexibility if we have snow days, if we have some other things in there, to still meet those instructional hours. And it requires board approval to do that.
I'm going to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I move to authorize the district to include up to 30 hours of professional development time, up to 30 hours for parent-teacher conferences, and up to 60 hours of recess for students in grades kindergarten through grade 3 for calculation of instructional hours for 2022 to 2023.
A second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second, and the motion is I move to authorize the direct district to include up to 30 hours of professional development time, up to 30 hours of parent-teacher conferences, and up to 60 hours of recess for students in grades kindergarten through grade 3 for calculation of instructional hours for 2022 to 2023. Vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have a 4-0. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item 9 on the agenda, facility work and healthy and safe school plan update. Mark? Maybe?
How are you guys?
Hey, Mark, good.
How are you?
Oh, tired. Let's see. The summer work that we did is. You guys have the written stuff, right?
The border.
Hit the highlights. What do we have on the slideshow? So we took the bad boiler out of Hillcrest. Had a bunch of these, they call it fittings that are in the heating system that were leaking, failing, so. I think we replaced about 100 of those, maybe a little more. New fence parts up at Hillcrest. This was a pretty big. We tore all the chips out of the playground at Hillcrest and put in about 400 feet of perforated pipe drain line, because that section right there was, you could walk out there and sink in up to your knees and chip, so it's pretty wet. So we're hoping that alleviate that problem. Striping up at for the PE class at Hillcrest and the covered play area. New water heater at North Bay. And we build a pump. Fence out at North Bay. Real time consuming at the middle school. There were a lot of classrooms that where they slide chairs up against the wall, and it was really tearing the walls up. So we put, I think we got 7 classrooms done this year. We used FRP. It's a fiberglass reinforced plastic panels, and did the whole lower 4 feet of the classroom. And 7 classrooms had 3 of them abated and new floors put in and then repainted all 7 of them too. And it's a lot better. With plans to do more next year. Middle school, little section of fence we put there to control traffic on the weekend.
So this was all the fencing was out of our assessment with the safe, like us, we had that safety audit and we went around and looked at all the schools and fencing was kind of the number one, like first thing to do. So that's kind of what you're seeing there.
So did the fencing, was it's security related?
It's security related.
Yeah. And
And access, like access into our buildings and
Okay.
spaces. So all of those, if you look at, if you come up to Hillcrest now, there was a kind of a walkway along the side of Hillcrest in that picture. So you could, like, people just would walk right past it and they're right next to classrooms. And so nothing really happened. It was like, that's a risk kind of level. And so like, we really don't need people walking that closely, being that like just right.
Yeah.
You know, the windows are kind of propped open. It's like, so all those fences are due to safety measures.
are we to a single point of entry for Hillcrest and North Bay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And all secured during the day.
Yeah.
All the way around. And this is the final, those fences at Hillcrest kind of secured that. Probably the only school that was left that isn't completely is the high school. And we've kind of gone around, we've improved, but there's still a few different areas that aren't like 100% secure, but there's not easy. We've done with the easy solutions. Now we have the challenging solutions. And we're trying to do some assessment of moving some parking and doing some things that maybe that would lead to that, but that's kind of the last level of that.
Thank you.
Oh, then we got the Legacy Plaza got finished up finally. I think we've got one light left to put up there. And our Pacific House project. That's pretty much wrapped up, I think.
We'll have an open house probably pretty soon. That's just about completed. I think they are using some space. We have kids in there. We have a grant from ODE to do some other materials and equipment in there that through ODE grant. So I think that's happening. So, and just kind of some final touches, and the outside doesn't look all that great. So that's kind of our next sort of level of work, but the inside looks unbelievable.
Looks good. Yeah.
Fabulous. compared to
Yeah.
How it was.
Amazing. Yeah, it was down to the studs. They and that was pretty much.
They did a lot of.
Yeah.
They had students working on it and they did what students do.
Yeah, so we'll schedule an open house here soon tonight.
Then the Healthy and Safe Schools plan is used by North Bend District to monitor environmental hazards, radon, lead. In water and paint, asbestos. Also requires this to have the integrated pest management, which is. We're not allowed to use herbicides and pesticides unless we have a licensed applicator and. Use posting and all that stuff. We try not to use any at all. The lead testing, the second round was completed in 22. The radon testing was completed. Just over Labor Day, finally. And our asbestos walkthrough. We did a couple months ago. Once tests are done and the reports are all completed, they get put on the district website for parents, community members to view. Emailed electronically to staff, students, parents to monitor. Parents of minors, students and other community members for whom you have email addresses, as well as be available to the public in print form at our main office. In addition to this, the school district is required to certify annually that it is complying by filing an annual statement.
Mark, do you want to touch on the results of lead or radon? Because I know we don't have them on the website yet. I think we're in the process of getting all that uploaded, but is there anything that you want to share on any outcomes?
When I talked to Ken the other day, he didn't have the radon results were back, but he didn't have the report ready. And the same thing with the asbestos. I've been trying to get a complete list of, or not asbestos, the lead in the water testing. Been trying to get a complete report from, but I haven't gotten it yet, so.
Initial reports on lead, there was a couple fixtures, I think I remember.
Yeah, there's shower fixtures there. So the first round of testing, we didn't have to test showers, we didn't have to test custodian sinks, we didn't have to test hose bibs. Some of that stuff came back high, so trying to come up with a plan to how to fix it, because it's not as simple as putting in a new faucet. So the showers were at the middle school, I think, and I don't believe there's a lot of kids taking showers anyway. So, but they're gang showers, so you have to tear the whole thing out and redo it. And like, so I'm trying to come up with a plan that we can, that's not going to break the bank.
And I know this question, are we required to post, like, so if we find lead in
Yeah,
those showers?
it'll be on our report.
In the actual site, like in the
Yeah,
middle school?
yeah.
So, or if we have a drinking fountain, which I think we've fixed all those.
Yeah.
And the last time this was done in 2017.
Yeah, because we had to test those. And
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff that came up this time was stuff we didn't test the first.
Yeah, so when we notify it, we end up basically closing it off and put a sign on there that it's, that they detected lead and not to use it, and then until we fix it.
So all the drinking water has been
Yeah,
sorted, okay.
yeah, unless they're,
Those all came clean.
Okay, any other questions for Mark? On facility.
We had a busy summer.
Yeah.
oh boy, it's getting any better.
All right, thank you, Mark.
You bet.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Item 10 on the agenda, graduation requirements. Daryl Johnson.
So Senate Bill 744 put on hold the requirement for students to demonstrate proficiency in the essential skills in order to graduate, and required that ODE conduct a comprehensive review of our graduation requirements to determine if our graduation requirements statewide were being followed and how they compared to graduation requirements in other states throughout our country. I'm going to start with the end in mind and just touch bases with the conclusion and then go back to some of the major recommendations. And I want to thank Kevin for coming up with this great cover letter, which succinctly summarizes the 160-page report. ODE did provide a summary of the report, which broke it down from 160 pages to 60 pages. So 3 pages. Good job. Thank you, Mr. Bogatin. It would have been a long night otherwise. I appreciate that. So I want to hit the conclusions here. And one of the conclusions was that reading, writing, and math are still required to receive a diploma in Oregon. And I think they came up with that response as people were concerned that the testing requirements dropped at the beginning of the pandemic. And I think there was a concern that maybe the Oregon diploma was suddenly becoming a little easier to attain. And they wanted to emphasize there are still a requirement that students meet the standards. There's still a requirement that students get, it says in the report, 24 credits because they use the Carnegie units. That's 72 trimester credits that we have here in North Bend. So that's still a requirement. And those credits are aligned with standards-based classes. The second paragraph of the conclusion is really interesting. And I think it ties into Director Jordan's story. So when you were in the 2nd grade, you and your mother received specific feedback, and I'll bet there were some recommendations on what you could do to achieve a desired outcome. That's an assessment. That's an assessment that gives you formative information, and that's the greatest value of assessment we have. And so in regards to that, Oregon's graduation requirements, which include demonstration of proficiency based on state-approved assessment options, which were developed and started in 2007 and enacted in 2009. The role of assessments in graduation requirements remains an outstanding question in Oregon. So the current ESPA model of assessment perhaps does not provide the same formative information on providing families and individuals with feedback and recommendations for improvement that really good assessments might give us, that allows students to use that assessment information to improve. So as we move forward statewide, looking at how assessments play into graduation requirements, I think that's a key paragraph to consider. And keeping in mind the power of that feedback that you received and comparing that to any future assessment requirements in our state would be key.
So right now, for this graduating class, the assessments for essential skills have been waived
That is
for
correct.
this year's graduating class in 2023 and subsequent years.
So currently, the essential skills by Senate Bill 744 are on hold for the class of 2023 and the class of 2024. Our current sophomore class, the class of 2025, that remains a question. So, and that comes into the third paragraph there in the conclusion. The recommendations of SB 744 report lead to no immediate action. The legislature, governor, and state board must determine what action, if any, to take and on what timeline. And I think the desire is that at some point after the elections that any changes in our governing bodies would then result in people coming together and re-examining this report to determine what, if any, actions to take. And that provides for time that if there's going to be a change in requirements for the class of 2025, they can start that process, or if they're going to just reinstitute the same requirements, they can still do so, because we are, well, for instance, next week, we're giving the PSATs to our current sophomores. That's the class of 2025. And the PSATs have historically been one of the tools that they could use to demonstrate proficiency in the essential skills. So they're still going to have those resources available in the event, we go back to the same model we were in. It'll be interesting to see what they decide with those outcomes once the election is done.
So how are we demonstrating competency in these core essential skill areas? How is that being done for this year? Is there no testing, or where are we at on assessment test?
That is a great question. I'm so glad you asked that question, because that comes into the question that while there's not a requirement to demonstrate proficiency in order to graduate, there's still a requirement to administer assessments to students in grades K through 8 and in the high school in the essential skills. So at the high school, what we've done over the years is that the essential skills assessments really and the mandatory state interim assessments have been woven into the instructional units. So for instance, at our 10th and 11th grade levels, we do essays, writing summaries that are then scored with the state rubrics during the winter term. So it's embedded into the instructional units. It's not a standalone that they run separate in addition to the SBA, although we are still administering the SBA. So they run that as part of their instructional units. In our math classes, they've embedded the standards-based assessments. And for those of you who've had high school students that have come through the program, you may recall your students saying, oh my gosh, I have to retake a standard, because if they don't pass the standard during their math class, they have to retake it. So they're embedded into the instruction. They don't stand alone. And that's part of the requirements in order for the students to gain the credits in that area. And I think that's one of the things that this study determined, is that the requirement for passing an additional test was in many cases a duplication of efforts that were already in place when the state required that school districts and schools start to teach according to the standards. So we do have a requirement for rigorous outcomes for students, but they're embedded into the classes.
So they're still in the example you had in math. So you're still taking assessment tests to pass the standard and to be able to move on.
Absolutely.
So what's changed here in North Bend based on the state not require, what has changed for us?
So for us, the big change is that if a student has not passed the ESPA or demonstrated proficiency in the essential skills via the PSAT, that at this time, they no longer have to take the additional step of producing a work sample during their senior year if they, or junior year, if they didn't pass a PSAT or SBUB, that demonstrates proficiency according to the standards using state-based rubrics. So prior to the pandemic, when the essential skills requirement for graduation was put on hold, we had an essential skills coordinator who was an education assistant that worked with students in that category who, for one reason or another, did not pass the assessment, and worked with them on an individual and small group basis to provide work samples. So they developed a portfolio demonstrating their proficiency.
So who did they present that portfolio to demonstrate proficiency?
So that portfolio was collected by an education assistant, and the materials would be graded by teachers. So district teachers. All right, so moving on, I do want to cover the 8 recommendations that this comprehensive review did come up with. Recommendation 1, aligning the mathematics credit requirements with other content area credit requirements. Basically, they want to change some of the language in the state requirements for graduation in math, where currently the language is that 3 credits starting with algebra 1 and moving on to 3 credits of standards-based math credit. 3 standards-based math credits. Now that equates to 9, again, in the trimester-based credit. And in this proposal, it doesn't have necessarily a starting point. So a student may come in not really ready for algebra 1, so they would still earn math credit that would apply to graduation from the time they entered high school with standards-oriented classes. So they would still need to get the same number of credits, but the starting point would be critical. Additionally, that would allow us to utilize classes that were aligned with other state standards, such as statistics. And we're seeing that becoming a more significant requirement under the new state math standards.
So on this one, have we essentially has the standards essentially been lowered? Because if you took algebra 1, then you had to take 2 classes beyond that. It's what, geometry and trigonometry?
So I'm going to open up the sock drawer for schools throughout the state of Oregon. The truth is, so if you look at algebra 1, then the next class in the articulation of math would be geometry. And then the next class beyond that would be algebra 2. But I believe there's not a district in the state that doesn't have alternatively named courses that cover algebra 1 and other content areas in a more broader context. So it doesn't necessarily accelerate a student to the completion of algebra 2, but it'll take algebra 1 and stretch it out, and then it'll take concepts of statistics and geometry and other algebraic concepts and stretch those out, so that students that need a little more time to master some of these advanced concepts are able to still progress towards graduation, get the math credits they need. In North Bend, what we've done is students, even though there is a requirement of only 9 math credits, they have to stay in math classes until they have documented or proven their proficiency in the essential skills, whether it's through the PSAT or the SBA or a work sample. So even though it's only 9 credits, they may have 12 credits by the time they graduate when the essential skills are required, because they must stay in a math class until they demonstrate proficiency. What this is doing is kind of acknowledging what's happening, is that we're gonna take students where they are in math, and we're gonna help them grow through 3 years of progressively rigorous performances in standards, and that will apply towards their graduation. Recommendation 2 is they would like to add 1 credit to the requirement of a future planning course. That may include things such as personal finance, but would also include components like completing the FAFSA and the Oregon Student Aid application. What's interesting is we actually had that class and had a credit requirement for that. That was our senior capstone class. I think actually North Bend is ahead by maybe a decade of where the state will go if that becomes a requirement, because we implemented that class for our seniors, and we realized that if you're doing a class like capstone for your seniors, you're actually starting it too late. If you're going to use that class for goal setting and for students to chart a progress towards the career that they want throughout high school, you cannot do it during the winter term of their high school experience. You have to start it at a younger grade. And at the same time, for those students who have already gained some of those goal setting skills and understand what the tools are to set goals and achieve goals and access resources like through the FAFSA, to have the requirement that they take that class during the winter term of their senior year, they've already done that. So it really wasn't meeting the needs of our students. So what we did is roll it back into advisory, and we have the tool of Navigator now, the Cooter Navigator system that's supporting that work during advisory, so that students will start goal setting from their freshman year. And that's something we've been talking to parents about, talking to students about. We encourage all of our parents to ask your student what their goals are, short and long term, and that needs to be structurally embedded into our expectations of kids, not just as a credit-based class. I love that they're looking at personal finance as a class. I definitely think that should be a standalone class. It's incredibly valuable, and you rarely will meet somebody over the age of 21 who doesn't say, I wish I spent more time studying personal finance. I mean, that's something we all discover we needed more of once we become adults.
I think the financial planning and the financial literacy course is a huge opportunity for us to impart some knowledge and wisdom in our students.
And I can see that aspect coming into play during the senior year, with the other portions of this recommendation being distributed through advisory during the 4 years of high school. I think it would be the model that I would hope for. So while these recommendations say add a 1 credit requirement for future planning course, which would be 3 credits in our system, I'm hoping they'll defer to local control, and that as a school and district, we can articulate how our students are going to gain those skills and experiences through high school in a way that empowers them to really use high school as a tool to achieve that ends, not that it's a class where they check the boxes off so that they've met the requirement to graduate. And those that already had the skill feel it's a redundancy, and those that didn't have the skill are gaining it at a time when it's really too late to take advantage of it in high school. So that's my hope anyway. Recommendation 3, that the education plan and profile be expanded to include a 2-year post-graduation plan. I think that's a great idea, and it's something, again, that we can implement pretty easily using the Navigator system. The nice thing about the Navigator system is that they set those goals, and that tool is available to them even after they graduate. So their portfolio, their resume, letters of recognition that they upload into Navigator, they'll be able to have access to. That becomes their intellectual property. Recommendation 4, they'd like to update the essential skills list. The current list was built 15 years ago, and so they want to take a look at whether or not some of those outcomes and expectations need to be updated, and I think that's fair. Recommendation 5, maintaining the emphasis on math, reading and writing proficiency through demonstration of knowledge and skills in courses, which is basically what we had done here in North Bend. We embedded those proficiencies into our math, language arts, and science classes. And that point, you'll see at the bottom of the page there, if you've got this cover page in front of you, this recommendation eliminates the requirement that students complete an additional state-approved assessment. And so that's something that we will need to keep in mind as the state moves forward with this, is that as a district, there are a lot of assessment tools available out there. If the state withdraws the requirement, what assessment tools do we want to hang on to? Because I think we need to maintain assessments and standardize assessments at the high school level. But do we want to continue to use the ESPA, which, while at the elementary level provides some formative tools, they aren't as numerous at the high school level? Or do we want to look at having the STAR assessment be our math assessment that we use, because it can be applied multiple times through the year so students can take it. It gives teachers feedback and instructional recommendations. So we'll be looking, I think, as a school district at different tools if the state moves forward with this recommendation. Recommendation 6, revive the extended application requirements so that they align with the updated essential skills list and definitions. So basically, right now, the extended graduation requirements exempt a student from the essential skills. And their recommendation, they're recommending that students who complete the extended graduation requirements also complete the essential skills. I think that's a fair thing to work towards. I do think it's something that SPED directors throughout the state will wrestle with how to embed that within a student's high school experience if they're in a program where they're needing additional assistance and maybe they focused on transitional skills. Hopefully the new and updated essential skills that they're talking about will allow for those transitional skills to apply, but we'll see what, if anything, comes out of the state's work after the election. Recommendation 7, revise the career-related learning experiences requirement so it aligns with the essential skills list and definitions. So, and this will provide increased accountability for schools to provide instruction time and support for students to complete the CURLEs, or career-related learning experiences. So currently, we have 2 CURLE experiences required in order to graduate. At North Bend, we've had a standard of at least 5 hours for each CURLE. And I've looked and I don't see that there's a state hour requirement, but we've had one at North Bend. As they come up with updated recommendations, it'll be interesting to see if we have once again always been above what the desired outcome and standard are anyway. Currently, we offer a number of rich opportunities for students to do that through our CTE programs, through internships. We have field days with partner agencies, and we had 32 students that attended a recent CFPA field day in cooperation with SWAC and local agencies. That's one example of things students can do to complete a CURLE. Our CURLEs are embedded into our advisory program right now. That's where they're documented. So students can begin earning them their junior and senior year, completing them their junior and senior year instead of just waiting till a senior capstone experience. Recommendation 8 is kind of a broad one to use practices and examples from around the nation on diploma pathways to make a single Oregon diploma accessible to all students. So this is a big recommendation because currently we've got the Oregon State diploma, the traditional diploma. We've got the modified diploma and the extended requirements. They're talking about combining all of those so that all of the requirements are attainable by all students in any of those paths. It will be interesting to see how they can merge all of those requirements. Because they're pretty broad, especially when you start looking at the extended requirements. So again, there's no immediate action recommended by the board. They want to wait until after the election to determine what, if any, the new seated legislature and governor will ask for. And then any new school board will give that directive to the ODE and they'll begin drafting recommendations. And we'll start what would likely be a multi-year process for designing a new Oregon diploma and implementing it. And I think if we begin that process, it's really important that as a board and as a district administration, we stay involved because there are so many things that we've done as a district that could be used as an example around the state. And if something really powerful for our kids is being introduced, it would be good to have a heads up to that and begin the process of implementing it before it becomes a requirement. That's presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. So just one question. Graduation rates have been on the increase, is that correct?
Yes. So North Bend has been on an increase for several years. We did have a dip last year, a slight dip. We could directly tie that to the pandemic and to the fact that we have students who chose to go to work. Many students now work and pay and are deferring getting their diploma in lieu of getting dollars. I've talked to several students who've come back and students that are now going on to get their GED, and many of them are still employed. This has been a pretty transformative time in our economic history. There's a lot of work still out there. Now, it'll be interesting to see what the coming year provides, if the economy is going to bring kids back to us or not. But yeah, we did have a dip during 2022. We anticipate we'll be headed back in the upwards direction.
So it was a dip from what to what? Just out of curiosity.
I think I don't have the numbers in
That's
front of me but I can tell you, I do believe we had a dip in
Okay.
2022, so.
So I do have a clarification question. It sounded like you said that the children are required to take the tests, but they're not required to pass them. That's what it sounded like.
Are you talking about that? So as far as the ESPA and the PSAT, which are two of the standardized assessments that are
They're
used.
not required to show proficiency in them. Like you have to test them, but they don't have to prove proficiency is what it sounded like you said, and what it seems like what I read in this. Is that,
Absolutely,
like,
yeah,
accurate?
that is accurate for Senate Bill 744.
That's a shame.
So the requirement from the Senate bill was that we continue to provide opportunities for students to demonstrate the essential skills and continue to provide assessments, but there's not a requirement of students in the state of Oregon
How is
to
it serving
pass
our
those
children?
assessments.
I'm sorry that has, I know you're just giving us information, but
Well, and I guess here's the interesting lens to look at it. So while in the past, they had to pass the assessment either through the PSAT or the ESPA or work samples on the essential
but
skills,
the key word you said was passed.
right?
And currently that is not.
Currently, that's on hold, but
Yeah.
they've always been required to demonstrate proficiency in the assessments that are embedded into the classes. So in North Bend, those standards assessments are assessments that students have to pass. If they don't pass, they retake it. Those are assessments that can stand in the way of a student graduating because they're not going to get the credit in class if they don't pass the embedded tests in the courses. Yeah, I know that's not gonna answer the concerns of those that do want to see rigor and a level of proficiency, but they are embedded into the classes that they have to pass in order to get credit.
Good thing it's just information.
So they're passing a high school, but they don't have to pass an Oregon test, a state test at this time.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, SB 744 put that on hold until at least 2025. Thank you.
Hold on, Daryl. I just have a couple comments, and this is just comments, not looking for a response. And just speaking as a board member here and make my thinking transparent. And some of these things apply to SB, the recently passed bill, and then this ODE report. But number one, I do not support lowering graduation standards or reducing the frequency of assessment testing. North Bend school tests, midterms, and statewide assessment tests provide data on student performance. And having this data allows us to know student performance, understand what we're doing well and what needs work, and make data-driven decisions based on student needs. So directionally, those are my comments. So anyway, thank you very much, Daryl. It was a good conversation. Thank you. Okay. Item 11, board comments.
A couple of requests, and I was wondering if we could get some information on the online learning option that was on our June agenda, maybe next month. We could get an update on that, or if you know if that's being implemented now.
I gave a brief update tonight in my superintendent report, so that's kind of where you want some more detail. I mean, we can have that, like our representative. I know Jake, you're talking about the ESV program that you heard
Yes,
about.
that Karis gave us.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so do you want, are we looking at like scheduling an opportunity for them, some representatives come in on how that program's going?
That would be great.
Okay.
And then on enrollment numbers, do we have an update on those also? Are they pretty steady?
I believe it's in the packet today. I think our enrollment was up 18 students. I don't have the exact number. I want to say it's 18 students over budgeted. Which was I don't know, maybe Tim knows this better. Was that a slight decline in the overall from last year numbers? Tim? It was 18 over. So look at what but yeah, so we kind of anticipated about, so our enrollment, I'd say, based on where we're at, is kind of coming in about what we expected. And so, yeah, we're at 18 students higher than planned.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, any other board comments? Okay, item 12 for information only. There's some financial information. And with that, item 13, we have an executive session. I'd like to thank everyone for coming this evening. Appreciate that. And it's currently 7:10. If possible, if we could have the room cleared by 7:15, so we could start the executive session here, that'd be great. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. You did a good job.